General Electric reporting first quarter earnings before the bell tomorrow. All eyes, of course, are on the company's leadership and the struggling turnaround plan, as well as a possible breakup, depending on what form that might take. Stock is the worst performing Dow component so far this year, and joining us to talk about it is former GE Vice Chairman Bob Wright, currently a senior advisor at Lee Equity Partners, of course, the founder of the Suzanne Wright Foundation. Bob, it's good to have you back. Good morning.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you very much.
You've talked many times about what a painful trade this has been for you and anyone who's been in the shares. Any reason to think tomorrow could bring an operational turn?
I don't know that it's going to make major announcements. I think we have to pay a lot of attention to cash now. Accounting is so complicated in terms of the new accounting procedures they're going to have to go through for contracts, that spending too much time on accounting, I think, isn't going to be profitable. Spending a lot of time on cash is I think, where we're going to have to look. There is cash outside the United States. I don't believe they've made a determination when they're going to bring that back in, but it's certainly positive. They've got to work that down on the debt. They've got maybe $150 million of debt, and they've got pension issues, but that's probably more achievable. But right now, I think the real issue is getting cash flows and looking at those cash flows, because they're too thin right now.
What options do you expect them to consider or talk more about in light of that focus on cash? Anything we haven't discussed so far?
Well, they've announced about $7 billion worth of transactions that they are either doing or considering to date. Including the one that was just recently announced. I think they'll probably hear some more about that. I'm not so sure that they're going to do that on the earnings date. They may do that later on in the spring. John promised a sort of a major speech or meeting about the future then. It's probably going to take a little later. I don't see how they can sell out these larger businesses, because that's not going to really help the situation. I think they're going to have to tough it down.
Yeah,
they're going to just have to tough it out.
David,
yes, David.
It's David. Bob. Well, yeah. Why don't you think it will help the situation? I think you're right. By the way, they're not going to announce anything tomorrow. I mean, they may be asked some questions. They'll have a prepared answer, certainly on the call. But I think we're probably talking a month or so from now to get more details in terms of the plan. Bob, but why do you not think that doing deals involving some of the big businesses, whether you want to call it a sale or a spin or some sort of a transaction, is not necessarily going to help?
Well, I didn't mean it that way. I meant an outright sale of those businesses. That's really in liquidation. I don't think that's I don't think that's very attractive. If they want to do some joint ventures with either parts of those large, that of course I think would be well received. Now they have another problem. Yeah,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I mean, the CFM situation right now is just so unfortunate. It's unfortunate that it happened, boy, but it couldn't happen at a worse time for GE. I just want to make a plug in there.
By that you mean the Southwest engine, for those who might wonder what that means.
Right. The CFM is the engine that was on that plane, and it's probably the world's most used commercial engine, and it has an incredibly great history. I plug one in there. David Joyce is the head of the aerospace business for GE, and he's an engineer's engineer. I think he's in the Engineering Hall of Fame. And those people are so dedicated to safety. They are some of the finest engineers in the world. And I imagine they're just ripping things left and right to find out why that particular piece of metal was weakened. It just comes at a tough time.
Yeah, it does. 6,700 planes this version is currently on. We always talk about the 737 being the workhorse, the focus of airline economics, but this engine on that plane is an amazing machine. Bob, David's done so much on media today alone. I wonder what story you think is most intriguing right now, and what pot's going to boil first?
Well, I think I think the president is handling himself very well, by the way, in this discussions with Japan and the discussions about North Korea. And I'm kind of very proud of the way he's handling this. Nobody else has ever wanted to get close to try to do anything of real significance with North Korea. So we'll see what happens. But I think it's all upside from my standpoint.
Hey, Bob,
that's
while
probably
you're
the
here,
biggest issue.
Bob, while you're here, I'd love to get your insight on something. I've been reporting a lot on CBS and Viacom on whether or not they can actually reach some sort of a transaction. But here's an area I know you have a lot of experience in: NFL rights. They're up, I think, in 22 for CBS, but you got to start negotiating well ahead of time. What is your sense there in terms of where they're going, how much people are going to pay, new competitors, the likes of whether it's Amazon or others who may be in the fray? Does it get tougher if you're a CBS to keep a franchise like that?
Well, CBS has long been a stalwart, and they have paid up every single time to get as much access as they can. I would guess they'll continue to do that. It is really very expensive. In terms of new people coming in, yes, the NFL seems to be encouraging that. They're doing it themselves. I mean, they're taking on a lot of games themselves. Amazon may be a bidder for more than a small piece of it. I think they'll be open to lots of different bids, and it'll all be expensive.
Any calls? Any predictions from you on AT&T Time Warner? Randall Stevenson taking the stand today, and depending on what decision you think we get, how does that color the future of media M&A?
Well, I've always believed that this is a vertical integration, and that should be allowed to go through. It's very difficult for me to see how that can be turned down, but it may be. So I think he's got the right hand in it. Now he's got to get the assistance in the government side. But if he doesn't get it, I think you'll see them changing their path. I think they'll probably sell DirecTV, maybe sell DirecTV and take another piece and go back to 5G. That seems to be something